Many months ago, I warned that we should watch Brazil. They are an incredibly powerful military, and there is a paradigm going on down there that's very different than the rest of South America. They see themselves, and rightfully so, as a world stage player, right alongside Russia, China, us. They don't think they get the respect that they deserve. And that's what led to this guy named Bolsonaro coming to power. With DC having failed completely, utterly, over and over and over again to do regime change in Venezuela, they're going to attempt to use Brazil as a patsy now. Brazil wanting this desire to have been responsible for something, anything that would be seen as a world event, to make themselves relevant, will grab onto this, not knowing, or maybe not even caring, about the long-term ramifications. And when I say Brazil, I don't mean the people. If the people of Brazil had had their way, Lula da Silva would be president, someone who is very much aligned with Nicolas Maduro and the president of Mexico, AMLO. But they had to jail him, which is, I think, what they would like to do with Nicolas Maduro. In fact, when they talk about new elections, many people don't realize that they aren't even going to allow Nicolas Maduro to run in the new elections, if they're ever held, which I doubt they ever will be. But imagine that. DC's pony boy down there, random guy named Juan, conducting new elections as his make-believe interim president duties would require, and then saying, oh, this person over here that has actually won 2 elections? No, they're not allowed to run anymore. Yeah, the one that got 9 million votes? Nope, he can't run. He's not even allowed to be on the ballot. That's the insanity. That's how completely and utterly ridiculous Washington, D.C. is. But 4 specific examples in the last year I would like to cover in this video to show you how D.C. said one thing, and then even people came to my channel and said, this is what really happened, and now we know for a fact it was a lie, and a known lie at the time. First example, the election. It took D.C. forever to figure out their guy couldn't win because they couldn't get all the opposition on one page. So they just said no election happened. There was an election. They were negotiating for months and months and months about this upcoming election. Who would be allowed to run? Who wouldn't be allowed to run? DC was invited to observe, as was the UN. The UN did go and observe and saw no difference in this election than they saw in ours. In fact, in some ways, it was better. So they failed in that narrative about the no election occurred. But they had to wait, of course, till January because Nicolas Maduro had won an election in 2013 that gave him a 6-year term. Now, no one ever asked the question, well, wait a minute, why did DC have to recognize that? Well, DC had to recognize that because DC did recognize that years ago. Then they tried to kill him. And of course, all of the trolls and everybody came out and said, oh, he staged it himself, and it wasn't real. Well, now we know it is. We have the people, and even U.S. intelligence has had to admit to CNN, and RT confirmed it, that they do in fact believe this was a real attack. They have the people in custody, and everything that was said by the Venezuelan foreign minister and the Venezuelan, their version of attorney general, was absolutely factually correct. The plan started in Miami, was concocted in Colombia, and then the items were snuck across the border. And this was an assassination attempt that is tied to the United States. I know it's CNN, but in this particular case, they're right. They got this one. They first got it wrong with everybody else, but at least they're attempting in their own way to correct. And believe me, RT wouldn't be on the side of CNN if they weren't telling the truth. Then there was this lie about the humanitarian aid. This bridge had never been opened. That's what those 2 blue containers and the 1 tanker is about. But of course, our government, media, neocon idiots ran out texts and tweets saying that this bridge was blocked for the humanitarian aid. It had been like this for a long time. It had never been opened. It was brand new. And then very recently, this story. Literally every major member of the administration came out on Twitter and said that it was, of course, the Venezuelans that did this, Maduro did this, and now we have video that we can see with our own eyes that it was Colombian thugs that did this. So how many lies are we up to now? 3? Oh, here's the 4th one. Then all of a sudden, through all of that, we didn't see Venezuela have massive blackouts. Not all last year. They had little areas that went in and out. We have areas like that here. And a lot of Latin American countries have brownouts. But then all of a sudden, after those 3 failures, magically, huge, giant swaths of the country lose power at key critical nodes. Not just one random transformer here or one random group of neighborhoods over there. The critical piece, the Uri Dam, was attacked. And the world has seen it because what's happened? Lights are coming back on. And they're staying back on. But not after having killed quite a few people. And also, as the Florida Maquis had predicted, there is no safe harbor in Colombia for regime change troops from D.C. And D.C. won't admit it, but even the president of that country says this. He may not agree with Nicolas Maduro, but he knows his people. He knows what'll happen if U.S. boots, D.C.'s boots, show up on the ground. Regardless of their opinions, they see us as the greater enemy. And he could not, under any circumstances, guarantee the security, operational security of our forces inside his country. So they've had to turn to Brazil. And they have just put out this huge bribe to give them major non-NATO ally status. Now, I know a lot of you don't know what that means. I'm going to read it for you and what this means. The status of major non-NATO ally gives a country preferential access to the purchase of U.S. military equipment and technology, including free surplus material, expedited export processing, and prioritized cooperation on training. Currently, 17 countries have MNNA status. Brazil would become just the 2nd Latin American country to join their ranks after Argentina, which received the designation in 1998. Colombia last year became not a NATO member, but a NATO partner, allowing Colombian armed forces to take part in NATO exercises and other NATO activities. The Brazilian officials said they have been negotiating the designation since the beginning of this year. They requested anonymity because they were not cleared to discuss it publicly, and of course the White House has declined to comment. The MNNA designation would ease the transfer of defense technology at a time when Brazil's aerospace industry has forged new ties with the United States, including a planned tie-up between, Boeing and Brazilian plane maker Embraer SA on both defense and commercial aircraft. So much for getting away from the military-industrial complex, huh? Brazil hopes to get a piece of the $300 billion a year space launch business by drawing U.S. companies interested in sending up small satellites at a lower cost from the Alcantara base run by the Brazilian Air Force on the Atlantic coast. Now, we've actually covered this in other videos. Alcantara has been largely upgraded. in recent years. Craig Fowler, the guy who took over Southcom after Kurt Tidd retired, said he was looking for a pragmatic and practical way to deepen the ties and share intelligence information. Guys, I am telling you right now, this is going to be their last stand. They're going to need to do this. They're going to make it seem as if the U.S. isn't involved because they're going to use Brazilian assets to do this. So they make it seem like it's Latin America standing up against Nicolas Maduro when it's not. But believe me, this will put a souring on the relations between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, otherwise known as BRICS. And when that happens, everything is going to change. Because Russia has investments in both Brazil and Venezuela. So does China. India is a huge consumer of Venezuelan oil. And India and Brazil, if they could ever get, I tell you what, on the same sheet of music with Venezuela, they could put a hurt on the world as far as the economy and natural resources. Many people still don't remember, or they forget, Venezuela was a founding member of OPEC, and this year is their year to be president of OPEC. They rotate that title. So they have a great deal of influence. This last little power hiccup had to be fixed quickly because it would have interrupted the oil markets. Now, there's reports out that say that the Saudis could have picked up the difference. The Saudis aren't going to, because they want the price to go up. They just got done doing DC's dirty work over the last 5 to 6 years, cratering the price of oil so that DC could take over Venezuela. But that didn't work out. This thing had a time limit on it. It still does. Regardless of what the administration says, there is a time limit on this issue. The longer Nicolas Maduro stays in power, the more credibility he gets. At this point, I don't even know that it is possible to remove him without straight up just saying, okay, we're going to invade. We're not even going to have the pretense of being the good guys anymore. They would have to become literally this. It's not like DC is a super popular at the moment, but they would have to go down to a level of unpopularity that would be literally North Korean around the world. And it wouldn't be easy. It really wouldn't be. And you have to have a common definition of win. I think this is where a lot of my listeners have a difference with me on opinion. Winning is not, in this particular case, not completely obliterating every livable space of your enemy. Because Venezuela, the people, are not the enemy of the people of the United States. This is a governmental issue. This is a tit-for-tat thing that it's a bunch of wealthy people in Miami that want their cash cow back, which is what we have alleged here at the channel for a long time. And I know I'm repeating a lot of information, but I think it's important to stay focused and remember the history of the last year. With everything that's on the news right now about, New Zealand, and it's easy to forget. It's easy to, let other things take precedence with what Israel's doing with Gaza, to understand this is still right in our backyard. And every day, Venezuela's getting better. They're becoming financially stronger. They're getting farther and farther away from the US dollar. They should call it the DC dollar, to be truthful. But that's another video for another day. Thank you, everyone who has come to Patreon and stepped up. I am humbled by the amount of you that have decided to get on the cutting edge of information warfare and join us here. YouTube has become a landmine, a giant series of landmines, I should say. It's very difficult to determine what video is going to be okay and which one's going to get taken down. I have some videos about Venezuela that I thought for sure would get taken down. They're monetized and perfectly fine. Some I thought that were perfectly innocent got taken down. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to it. They never tell you why when you put up a video. They just say it's either monetized or it's not monetized or it's blocked. I wish there was a way to understand it, but safety says bring it over here until such time as things calm down. But thank you once again. I very much appreciate it. Keep an eye on Brazil. Keep an eye on Bolsonaro. His vice president has come out specifically and said that there would be no U.S. boots on the ground there. We'll see how long that lasts. Like, share, subscribe.